Good afternoon. Welcome back to Center Stage at Beth Israel. So pleased to have our friend and member of our congregation, Dr. Lazar, with us today. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. I'm very glad to be here talking about things that I love.
Best to call you Dr. Lazar?
You can call me Julia. Thank you.
So Julia, tell us where you grew up.
I grew up in Fairfield, Connecticut, which is about an hour to an hour and a half outside of New York City. Yeah.
And your college was, undergraduate was?
Undergraduate, I went to Dickinson College, had a fantastic experience there, certainly very formative, even in what I do today and cementing my interest in environmental issues. And I also met my husband at Dickinson. And yeah, it's a small liberal arts college in central Pennsylvania.
When you enter, you're 17, almost 18 years old, did you already know then that the life of science was going to be where you wanted to head?
No, I didn't. And I was actually a little bit older than that when I started because I had deferred my acceptance. So yeah, I would say there were many things that influenced me in deciding to go into science, and certainly my childhood. We did a lot of outdoorsy activities. My mom was a Audubon Society volunteer, and I did a lot of programs with the Audubon and with the local birdcraft. All of these things that felt like home and very comfortable place, and I think that probably started my interest in just feeling comfortable in nature, wanting to ask questions, learn about nature. As a high schooler, I also was a volunteer at those at the Audubon Society, and it was a very, you get close with the coworkers and things like that. And then I also worked at a summer camp in New Hampshire, a rustic camp, for many, many years in the summer. All of those things helped me just be very curious about nature and cement how I love being a part of nature and how humans and the environment interact. But then in terms of deferring my acceptance to Dickinson, which is what I was talking about, I felt very lucky that I was given the opportunity to consider having a gap year. It's something that I hope to be able to offer to my own kids too. And so I took a gap year, I'd gotten accepted into Dickinson, and then delayed for a year and did a Outward Bound course, which is a national outdoor leadership program. And it's Leave No Trace camping, it's bringing everything on your back, all of these things that were influential into cementing my interest, I would say, in humans' interaction with nature and wanting to preserve it. So I had this gap year, and then I worked for a couple months and then lived in Costa Rica as well, and then signed up for a freshman seminar, and that's what cemented my interest in wanting to be in science, because that freshman seminar was pivotal in me engaging with professors that I was like, whatever they're teaching, I want to take more classes with them.
And that's a wonderful way to start your adult life. It's like, I have found something that is close to my heart. That must have been a great feeling. Yes,
it really was. It was wonderful to have professors that I felt like I got to learn from them and be, we did a lot of field trips. We did a ton of trips to the Chesapeake Bay and to the Louisiana coastline, all learning about how the natural environment and humans and how especially like the waterman culture and the fisherman culture interact for financial benefit as well as the ecosystems that we rely on.
Well, even early on, when you're in undergraduate school, you're already learning about how complicated not just the environment is, but the economics of the environment are.
Yes, certainly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember being fascinated when we went to the Smith Island. We got to spend a week in Smith Island during that freshman seminar. And Smith Island is on the Maryland side, so Chesapeake Bay is split between Virginia and Maryland. And they have different state rules on, the size of the crab and males versus females, when you're allowed to harvest them, and all these different things. And these island cultures are very much reliant solely on the crab populations. That's how they make their living. And so just learning how local regulations and how the ecosystem health really makes certain cultures very dependent. It was fascinating. We got to go to their communities, go to their church services, hear about, some of them, crabs are in their prayers. And it was just a beautiful lesson in kind of the interdisciplinariness of the way humans and the environment interact.
That is even more true today, isn't it? Nothing's changed in that line.
Yeah, no, definitely. It's definitely how we're a part of the environmental system, and how can we.
Your PhD is in?
Biogeochemistry. I did work on environmental science for my PhD as well at University of Rhode Island's Coastal Institute. I was awarded a National Science Foundation fellowship, so I was fortunately covered my entire time, and that was a wonderful privilege as well. I focused on biogeochemical hotspots and cycling of nutrients from agricultural runoff, and how that led to the health of the estuaries in Rhode Island, also related to fishing and beaver populations.
And the conclusion must have been at some point, this is all pretty darn complicated.
Yeah, definitely. It is really complicated. In some ways, it became simpler, because when you're doing a PhD, you're really focusing on a very narrow area, and you're contributing to one piece, and then you're making it bigger, and apply, connecting the dots between other people's research and whatnot.
And it sounds like an area that you be centered on was the area of water.
Mm-hmm.
Is that a fair statement?
So basically what the interest was for my PhD was, how do nutrients cycle from the water into the soil and then back into the air?
And is there an issue, again, that I am as far from a scientist as you could possibly be, that concept of the movement of these very important particles of life, is that been going on for thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of years?
Yes, exactly. It is nothing that those cycles have continued for forever. Yeah, since the Big Bang or some time after that. But yes.
And how much? And I'm not going to presuppose anything when I ask this question. How much have human beings done to unsmooth that process, for lack of a better term? Have we harmed that process in the past 200 years?
So yeah, certainly there's some amount of natural warming through wetlands, which release methane, which are a heat-trapping gas. And then we have accelerated the rate of warming through industrialization.
So I'm trying very hard to acknowledge that we have this incredible earth with incredible amounts of water. We're much more water than land on this earth. But it seems as though, let's just say 200 years now, we're kind of chipping away at our assets. Is that fair?
Yeah, I think the science is clear that there are large risks associated with not mitigating climate change. So that is a lot of the work that I work on now in my role for corporate sustainability too, and kind of interpreting some of the science and using data to help inform business decisions.
How big of a group of people do you think are centered in the same manner you are?
I think that many, I would say, Fortune 500 companies have people like me working with them. probably at some level, because a lot of them have very science-based goals and targets that they're working towards to reduce their emissions.
And sometimes Americans think we're the only country in the world. On a larger scale, on the broader world scale, everywhere you look, other people centered like you are?
I would say that I think the European Union, those countries have strong regulations that push really everyone to think in this direction, and other countries do too, not just the European Union, but that those help focus everyone as well.
So you get your PhD, and where do you go when you have that honor bestowed upon you? What happens next?
Yeah, so I think that, so the PhD was kind of very much like a lab coat scientist type role, did a lot of research both in the field and in the lab, and enjoyed it, worked with great people, had a wonderful experience, came out here for my husband's job actually, and worked was looking at staying in academia, but was more interested in a little, the corporate world is quite fast-paced, and you get to make decisions and influence things much faster than in academia. And I got a role at Goodyear, the tire and rubber company in Akron. And so I worked there and really loved that, and loved the global aspect of it and the wide breadth of material that you're reporting on and learning about and thinking about in relationship to your products. And then from there, I worked at an engineering firm for a few years before starting at Eaton, which I'm still at now.
And when it comes to making that, what I would think would be a pretty big step, academia to a world-renowned, world-sized corporation, did you have a pretty good feel for what you were going to find?
No, it was a totally new world.
Yeah.
Some of the things that we were working on, they were very different than the way that we were handling problem solving at Eaton. At corporates versus in academia. And I think, for what I do now and what a lot of people that are in corporate sustainability do are working at, understanding the science, looking at the data, and then trying to translate that for business decision making. And that's the kind of influence that they're looking for people in my role to have.
And at least when you were starting out of academia, was there a possible role for you at the government level as well?
Yes, and I worked for the EPA actually in Narragansett, Rhode Island. I also worked for other branches of government. I worked for nonprofits as well after undergrad. I worked for local government in a wastewater treatment plant one summer when I was at undergrad. So I would have probably been very happy working for the government as well. I was at a research area in the government. The Narragansett Bay EPA is research heavy. I was doing research on carbon cycling and carbon storage of wetlands across New England. And I definitely enjoyed my time there and loved it. I think that would have been a good fit as well, but honestly, I really love working in the corporate world. It is, I feel like you get to have a lot of influence, and it's work that I greatly enjoy.
You came to Cleveland how many years ago now?
I came to Cleveland around, I guess, 11 years ago.
And how long have you been a member of our temple?
10 years. I guess we moved, it might have been more like 12 years ago that we moved here, but yes, we've been a member, I think, for the last 10 years since my oldest daughter was born.
And always lived in the Lakewood area?
Yes, always lived in Lakewood.
What was the reasoning behind choosing Lakewood, you think?
My husband's job was here.
Okay.
So yes, he still works at the same company that we came out here for, and he's in strategy consulting.
So when you come to a temple our sized, I should go backwards. Were you a member of a temple growing up?
Yes, I was. My parents are still active members at that synagogue.
Reform, conservative?
Reform,
Bigger, smaller than ours?
bigger.
Was it an adjustment to come to a smaller temple?
Yeah, slightly, yeah. But we were just happy to, have a local congregation to be a part of.
Yeah, sometimes smaller is better.
Yeah, yeah.
At least that's the theory here. And how do you integrate your time here with the vastness of the job that you have when you're not here? How does that work?
Yeah, I think of this as a nice, when you think of what brings balance in life, and that having a community of people like this, I think, is just very important for, just kind of bringing more to your life and not just being about work. I'm not often talking about work here, but my kids go to Hebrew school here, and we feel very connected on a friendship level with many people here, like you and your wife and many others. And so I think of this, sometimes some of it relates to some of the, since I'm on the board too, able to maybe some of the problem-solving skills that I have from work that can be applied here. But overall, I think of this just as a wonderfully warm and welcoming community that I like to have to add to the resilience of life when things are hard.
Well, you just brought up a very interesting concept. That is the term problem solving. Mm-hmm. That's human nature, correct?
Yes, hopefully.
Whether we are self-creating our problems or they're thrown in our laps, it's a challenge in any profession to figure how am I going to get out of this one, right? So at least that's what I've been working on for 45 years now. How do you get people out of the trouble they may have even brought upon themselves? How do you define in your work the problems that need to be solved?
Often, what we're looking at is if there's, so for one of the projects that I lead is knowing our greenhouse gas emissions. And that is a compilation of a ton of data of all of our sites and all of the natural gas and electricity and propane and all different kinds of fuels and refrigerants, and bringing that all together across all of our sites and coming, to this is our emissions for right now. We're just releasing our reporting on our full emissions for 2025. And those are going to be integrated in our financial reporting in the future. And being able to then have that information and use that data to help inform a strategy and say, okay, if we have a goal to reduce 50% by 2030, where does it make the most sense to invest in our operations to reduce our emissions? And those are the kinds of problem solving that corporate sustainability people do. And it's very nice to be able to have that kind of help. Another example would be that we have to look at climate modeling scenarios. Say, you think, what is the world going to be like that in 2050 in terms of if business as usual continues or if other things change and we reduce emissions, and then we're asked to, knowing where our sites are, what type of risks in terms of physical risks such as wildfire, droughts, and things like, all of these types of risks, what does that mean for adaptation needs and planning for that? And those are business decisions. So it's a lot of translating, having questions, being curious, using data, and then being able to translate that into helping decision makers at a company make informed, practical decisions that will help with long-term sustainability of the business and the environment.
So, business, environment.
Mm-hmm.
It's a balancing act that goes on every day in your professional life.
Yeah, because I think that many, with there's many ways that we see that, companies are playing a role in helping to support having products that can help with adapting to climate change or mitigating climate change. Tons of things with grid infrastructure, electrification, increasing renewables, things like that.
Well, let's take a step back for a moment to those who don't live in the Cleveland area who might be watching or are not aware of the size of the corporation that you work for. The formal name is Eaton Corporation,
Yes.
formed here in Cleveland many, many, many years ago by a gentleman whose last name was Eaton. Yes.
Maybe, yeah, I'm not
Yeah.
sure. We also had, there's been so many acquisitions that I'm
Yeah.
not certain. But yes, we'll go with that.
Can you state with some type of generality what Eaton does?
Yes, Eaton is a global manufacturer for electronic equipment and aerospace goods, general industrial goods and electronic goods as well. A lot of products for electrification, grid stability, uninterrupted power supply, increasing renewables, a lot of things in aerospace for planes, and on the industrial side, also truck transmissions, electric car parts as well. So yeah, just a large industrial goods company and electronic goods.
And I'm assuming they have touches in every corner of this earth.
I don't know, yeah, the scale of the footprint is quite large.
That's a better word,
The footprint is large. Yes, when we work with some very large customers, such as utilities, and large hyperscale type customers as well. So, yeah, I think that is very much why we can help, because that, like you're saying, the scale of a company like Eaton is able to help so many customers that have a strong presence as well.
How long has it been for Eaton to have a sustainability department section interest?
Yeah, I think well before I was there, I've been there 6 years. They have had, I would say, they must have had probably starting in, I think, 2006, they started reporting on their emissions through the Climate Disclosure Project. So they were early adopters. They've had waste and water reduction goals and these kinds of efficiency standards in terms of for their operational sites for a long time. It's very much integrated into the fabric of the company, that they care about sustainability. It is not a side project. It is part of their strategy. And I think that brings a lot of comfort to many employees as well that care about this.
Can you do your job staying at the corporate headquarters here, or do you have to travel around and make visits to all these places?
I do not travel that much. Sometimes I go to conferences, and I've been to, maybe 10 of our sites or so, but I haven't. There's many places I haven't been. I'd love to go to more, but yeah, I don't need to travel that much, which I'm also very grateful to not travel.
So let's say there's trouble at some plant in Asia.
Mm-hmm.
Is the first person they call is you? What do we do about it?
No, definitely not. I'm not, the operation, so it depends on what's going on at the plant. But, there's a lot of resources. Certainly there's, at the site level and at the regional level and at the business level, there's all sorts of resources relating to quality and facilities and making sure, machines are running well and things like that. I'm more of somebody that gets called in for corporate strategy on how do we have goals that are science informed and that we can track and report on and improve on every year, and how do we make sure that the data is good supporting those targets and how we're reporting on them and giving confidence to investors and customers that are asking us questions.
Are there people of like positions all over the world doing what you do, or is the department here in Cleveland it?
The department in Cleveland is
Wow.
the corporate sustainability group, yeah. So it's a small team. I would say our influence is, like a lot of things at corporate, they don't want a ton of headcount really, and so our ability to influence and work across lines, work with supply chain, work with operations staff, meaning site people, work with cybersecurity, with legal, across, I am frequently working with finance. That is, we have a small but mighty sustainability team. Probably we have, I would say, in terms of dedicated headcount, we'll have, I guess, like 5.
Wow.
And then there's a lot of work, though, that we do with people that work with us. And even if they don't have, maybe they have sustainability in their title or not, but we're still all working together, because overall the goal is that we're all informed and working on the same targets towards the same overarching goal for the company.
How many employees does Eaton have, do you know?
I think they have around 94,000, but something around that.
Oh, my God.
Yes, it's a very, yeah.
And how many of them work here in Cleveland, do you know?
Probably, well, we have a plant in Euclid as well, with a couple hundred there, but in the Beechwood office, it's maybe, I don't know, 700 or so, I'm not sure.
So is it easy to define what a head of sustainability does on a daily basis? Can you tell us about a day
Yeah.
that kind of represents what you do, and I guess I should preface that with, are there days when you are home all the time, or are you always at Beechwood?
No, I work 3 days a week in Beechwood and 2 days a week at home.
Okay.
And I would say no 2 days are the same. There's
Which is
a
good.
lot, yes, it's very exciting. I like that. There's a lot of meetings on, working on kind of translating the science, asking good questions, being observational about what's going on and what's needed, and then being able to help inform the business leaders to make practical decisions. I would say that, earlier in my life, there was lab experiments and things like that, and now it's very much on data analysis, not so many lab experiments, scenario planning, like I said, for different climate scenarios as well, what adaptation needs there might be, how do we reduce carbon and mitigate the emissions at certain areas depending on their location, having teams work on operational problem solving to get to where we need to go and where we've publicly stated that we're targeting to, hit these goals.
Talk for a moment about power.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it be water power, solar power, wind power, or gas power. Seems like we're always seem to be currently in a mode of alternative sources of power. Does Eaton play a role in all of those types of power?
Yes, yeah, because our equipment can support both, traditional power that uses natural gas or whatnot, as well as geothermal and hydro and solar and nuclear and wind.
Wow.
So we can play a role to help make sure, regardless of power source, that's kind of power source agnostic, our products are still helpful. But we definitely play a role in helping to make sure that the products that we sell can, one of the things with certain types of renewables is that they are, not as constant. It depends, for hydro can be constant and geothermal, whereas wind and solar, they usually have, solar has a daily component, wind is usually more active at night, and so then you need battery backup power in order to make sure that whatever you gain during the day, if you don't use it, you can store it or add it to the grid in some way.
Yes.
So those are also areas where we play, and one of the things that we measure ourselves on is tracking R&D, research and development spend towards products that we that are influential on increasing renewables, increasing electrification, increasing grid stability, things like that we know overall are what, climate science agrees is needed.
And let's just take a couple of things separately. The issue behind solar is the sun's not always out.
Mm-hmm.
Does Eaton Corporation play a role in making sure, what is Eaton's role then with just that one source of solar power?
I think that, we will, at our sites, anywhere where we can, we add solar as something that we can do because it's, a win to be able to use that as source of energy. And then certainly on a larger scale, we invest in larger scale renewables for the grid. And then we also help support products that can be used with solar.
Nuclear power is one that we've had around for a while. Had a couple accidents here and one actually in Ukraine. Does Eaton have a role in the nuclear power world?
I do not know. I know that in general, that nuclear, not speaking anything on behalf of where I work, but nuclear is carbon free, and it does have risks for sure. It is a carbon free energy source, and therefore, in general, in the climate world, especially in other countries, they're increasing the amounts of nuclear due to its carbon free nature to help with things. So it seems like it's one of the key players as a source of energy.
You can't talk about the current world, I think, without talking about AI, artificial intelligence. Might not necessarily be my generation's first motive to describing where we're going in the world. Tell us first, what role does AI play in your everyday business world?
Yeah, we use AI. We also have customers that support AI, and I personally find it incredibly helpful for doing a lot of analysis quite quickly on data. We've had it in our, probably for, 2 years or so, I've had it on my computer for work. I use it more and more, and it is scary, I'd say, in some ways, in terms of being reliant on it, for sure, just on a personal level, but there's no question it's incredibly helpful in terms of the speed at which it can help answer questions and analyze data and come up with solutions, and yeah, it's very, very useful.
And there are people that are talking very frequently that AI is going to change the employee world quickly, maybe quicker than we're ready for.
Yeah.
That the number of employees needed, the number of employees centered on certain areas is going to be gone, because it can be done, in 30 seconds what might take 2 days before. It sounds like that happened a couple hundred years ago when we decided there was steam, then we decided there was a railroad, and then we decided there was an engine and a car and an airplane. And is AI on that sphere of ability to change the world?
I don't know. I wouldn't be surprised. It would not shock me. I certainly feel like in terms of the jobs, I see the same things that you probably see, that it does eventually lead to decreased headcount. That's not shocking. I think that no matter what, if you're able to help lead meetings, to help gather people together to make decisions, that will still be needed, even with AI, and that it can be used as a tool to support all those things, and make the company strong. But yeah, I definitely see that, a lot of people are able to perform much more work because of the assistance with AI. So I see the same projections that you just mentioned. It is worrying, but like so many things that there are to worry about, it's not one that I have any control over.
And what would the role of AI be in the work that you do now?
Oh, yeah, so I mean, I use it because, so for example, so like many of the things, you know, I work with very large data sets. And when I'm trying to make sure that we have confidence in the data, and so there's many things that I work on regarding data. Data quality and data governance are big because we publicly report a lot of things and we want to have confidence in them, and we want to be able to have investors and others have confidence in them as well. And so I use AI to review large data sets and tell me what are outliers, what seems significantly different from past years, where a site might have accidentally misreported the amount of electricity they used or something like that, so that we can make sure to, you know, get more eyes on it and make sure this is what we're saying, is this accurate, kind of checking. This is also helpful because we have, so I'm in charge of the greenhouse gas inventory, which is third-party audited, and that means that, you know, it's very important to be able to have the governance structure around all of the data. So using AI helps with data analysis and picking out outliers. These are things that you can do in Excel without AI, but AI just does them faster. And it can pinpoint like what are sites that have had big year-over-year changes, and then you'd know like, oh, well, this site, you'd expect them to have a huge increase because they increased production or had a big addition put on and are ramping up production, or are a new site and they weren't really using much because they were just being started last year. Or the opposite, if the site is closing, that would make sense that they have a big drop in emissions. But just trying to make sense of it and make sure that we have, high data quality.
Certainly, it's fair to state that this type of increase in, we're going to call it productivity for the purposes of this question, goes across all the different sciences, not just your area of sciences.
Right.
Do you see that in your everyday, that it isn't just your department that's able to use it, but everything that's coming across your desk has used it?
Yeah, I can sometimes tell for sure if emails are written to me with AI versus not.
Yeah.
Things like that. Yeah, I mean, we're definitely encouraged to use it. It's very helpful also, just the company as the large as Eaton is, to look internally to align on what's the right document to use for certain things, like making sure that we know what our policies are for certain sites if we're looking at, regulations that apply to what areas. All of these, everything that's on our internal websites are very searchable with AI, and it makes it, instead of you searching and looking around and wasting time trying to find the right document, we have an AI that's for the general outside of the web and one that's internal, and it just makes it faster for it to pop what is the most relevant document for you to be looking at for what's applicable.
Certainly, it's fair to state that AI can make your job simpler.
Yeah. Oh no, it's a big help. It's an assistance.
And are there areas? Let me rephrase that question. Can it make it more complicated in your life as well? Because it brings up so many issues that you didn't even think about. Oh my gosh, wait a minute, before we say yes, this computer is telling me, artificially is telling me, I'm missing 14 things that I need to consider.
Yeah, and I think it does. It does increase the work. It does maybe
Yeah.
increase your responsibility because you can do more, because you have a extra set of hands of, if you will, to do a bunch of work and ask a lot of questions and get more information that might lead to more work, for sure. That can happen too.
IT is information technology. That's what IT means. And it certainly has changed over the past just 30 years of what IT means. When you were beginning your education, let's say, or you're going through your undergraduate work and you're in your PhD, could you have envisioned the speed in which information was going to be processed?
No, I definitely don't. I had heard about how every, decade, there's some, I don't remember the statistic, but there's a lot of quotes that just like the speed of how information is going to be transferred and shared and how immense that is. And I had heard that, but no, it is quite amazing what has happened in the last few years.
Yeah.
It is astronomical, and I think our lives certainly will change some. It's unknown what, there's like so many things like that where the future is very.
But I go back to what you mentioned a while ago about working in the field and working in water, and not just in between your college years, you went to Costa Rica, and all those different experiences that a young scientist has. Are we going to lose those because of AI?
I don't think so. I would hope not. I think that those experiences make someone stronger in being able to communicate well across different groups. So many things from those experiences helped with my leadership skills and communication skills and confidence building and problem solving and just being curious and observing. And so much of what I think that I took from all of my previous experiences in life into what I use now is be curious, ask questions, keep asking questions. These are the things that in many jobs help you. And it happened to be that I was so very much enamored by the natural world and felt comfortable there, and that was something that was cemented in me, that I always wanted to be working towards something that I felt was tied to that. I feel very lucky to be able to do that.
Sure.
And have a professional job in that area. There's tons of paths to being in corporate sustainability, not just the one I made, but yes, I feel very lucky for that, and I do think that all of those experiences that I had were pivotal in being passionate, and that passion helps me communicate with business leaders and helps me influence them, and that communication is key. So I feel that those earlier endeavors were very important, and I don't know if I didn't have them, and then I wouldn't be as passionate about these topics.
Yeah.
I think then your influence weakens as well.
When I was in law school, we had a weekly paper update of new cases and a quarterly book of paperized new cases. And you went to a law library and you studied, and I understand change, but I'm wondering whether I still look at the young lawyers and think they didn't experience the steps that I had in doing just not only legal research, but how to be a lawyer. So here we have you with your experiences. Now, I'm wondering whether the PhD program is, one, how similar it is to what it was when you were there.
Yeah, and I mean, honestly, the PhD program is such it's very kind of ancient. I don't, that the way that the PhD is, you're publishing, the peer review process is very interesting. I, was fortunate to publish numerous pieces, and that's, part of being able to defend your dissertation is publishing.
Yeah.
I would say that some of that, I think, for a long time has been questioned, even before AI. And I wonder, too, I'm not sure how does research, especially, there's a lot of things that make research difficult these days, but yeah, I'm not sure how AI will change the PhD, but I also think that perhaps there is room for improvement in some of these programs anyways. So, but yeah, I love, the PhD it was like a 5-year program. I was fortunate to work with a great professor and lab team. But yeah, you're incredibly focused on a narrow, in terms of influence, I think that academia is challenging because you have a limited sphere of how fast you can get things done compared to the business world.
Can you imagine the changes that your daughters will see in their next 20 years?
Oh, I know. I mean, they're going to be, it's gonna be interesting. I'm not sure how the job, what jobs will be considered still say, right, for years and years. It's like, oh, do a STEM degree, engineers, lawyers, like certain things are just considered safe majors, and I wonder how AI will change that. How much of it will be, some of that stuff will be, different for them. I don't know, but yeah, I do wonder about that.
I remember when I think our kids were out of school when they started giving computers to the kids. And, and it was a kind of probably a pretty bulky iPad of some sort. Nowadays, they have one ubiquitous thing in their hand at all times, right? The
Yeah.
phone.
Oh, I
And
know.
the phone isn't just a phone, it's a computer on a phone in your hand and all that. How does all that, does that worry you about raising your children?
Yeah, yes, certainly. I think I want them to be able to make eye contact with people, to have real
Yeah.
skill sets in socializing. I think that when I think of my health and why is work fulfilling, a lot of it still has to do with relationships.
Yeah.
I love the people that I work with. I have fun at work. I feel very fortunate that I can say that because I know that that's not a common situation. I also get to, I feel like, work for a place where people really believe in the mission of the company and the values and care about being ethical and talk about these topics. I want my kids to be, they're going to be using phones. They're going to be using technology. There's no way to avoid it. But I hope that by providing them enough other experiences where they're without technology, that they get these other skills. I think that one of the risks that we've learned about more and more is that when kids, or really any age, run into hard times, that, scrolling on social media isn't necessarily going to help you. Maybe it will distract you for some amount of time, but that you need to be able to talk to somebody that you feel close with or build friendships in other ways that aren't just on a screen. And work is one way to do that, Like, I feel very lucky that I have some really strong relationships with people I work with. Of course, my husband, I can't imagine a more supportive partner who makes my life at work be able to be possible because he does so much at home as well. And certainly family. I mean, this community is part of that as well, truly. So I really hope that by building a lot of different ways through work, through other activities, through summer camps, through maybe taking gap years, and impressing upon them that while we do rely on technology and we need phones and we can adore social media for some of the wonderful things that it does bring us, also it has its risks and it will manipulate you, and you don't want to be manipulated like that. And so in order to be truly strong, you need to have all of these other buckets that you can also pull from.
Do you sense a scientific mind in these young daughters of yours?
I don't know. They're too young. I don't know. I hope that they're curious. I hope that they feel like that they enjoy learning and that they can keep asking questions and being engaged. I hope that all of that stuff is something that they can do.
Are there goals that you've set aside for yourself that are just the next thing on your bucket list that you're going to get to, either professionally or personally, that, something I haven't done that, and that's where I'm going next?
One of the new things that I'm working on that I'm excited about is we are focusing, understanding some of the climate risks in various regions. So we are working on both on the financial side as well as the physical risk side for adaptation needs. So what I was talking about before was more on the mitigation side, which is what are we doing to reduce our emissions? And then the other side is adaptation, which is knowing that climate change is real and will be happening. Also, that these risks exacerbate certain areas, certain regions more than others. Drought in certain parts of the Southwest or Mexico, or wildfires we've seen in California and things like that. what does that mean for our sites? And so I'm excited to start working with those plants and coming out, hearing from them, what are the critical things, like are there any issues that are happening now that would be related to some of these things, and how do we plan for that? And that's working, again, that'll be working across many functions, finance, plant operations, all different kinds of groups of teams at Eaton. So I'm looking forward to that. And again, it comes down to being able to ask questions and listen, help translate that into informed decision-making that can be adding to the resilience of Eaton, and that's good for business and good for the products that we know people need for electrification and grid resilience that we all depend on for power.
I'm sure you have associations with your compatriots and other corporations. Do you find like-minded enthusiasm for the work you do in other big multinational corporations that you work with?
Some of them it's varied. I would say we get a strong interest from customers that are large customers that you would, that are in everyday life. Eaton is not like a name that you would hear in everyday life because we're mostly a lot of business to business versus a name brand that you'd recognize in places. But yeah, some of those customers that have sustainability as a core value in their supply chain decision making, and therefore they want to know all about the metals that we're using, and if they're virgin or recycled, the emissions associated with the products that we sell to them, how recyclable, and how to make sure that the products, when they're end of their useful life, which could be 30 years from now, how to make sure they're recycled. And a lot of, also on the social side, making sure that there's interest across the board at a lot of large corporations where sustainability aspects are a big factor in their purchasing decisions. And because of our scale and influence, we are grateful for that, because we feel that we're able to help our customers hit those sustainability goals. So it's not just our goals that we're trying to hit for our own operations, but also the fact that our products, we're able to have the data to support how we're doing R&D to make our products more efficient, to use less energy, that then can help our customers tell their story and hit their goals.
So one area that I want to cover before we finish, that is the role of government. State government and/or, I would assume, mostly federal government. Is there constant interaction between yourself and different federal agencies?
I don't work with the federal agencies as in the U.S. The state of California has some reporting that I do, and they're a major economy. Obviously, I think they're the largest economy in the U.S., so their regulations, we would just report on behalf of all of Eaton. And they have climate legislation stricter than the federal government, but the European Union has the strictest right now.
Is that right?
Yeah, and we are Irish, technically. So, or we're headquartered in Ireland. So we, although we're traded in the S&P, but so we are affected by the European Union standards, and that is so yeah, very much influenced by those regulations. We always had been reporting our emissions before they were required, so we were well prepared for the regulations, but the regulations are incredibly, they go deep. It's called the Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive, and it also includes the EU taxonomy and how you classify your products. And so it's putting a lot of might behind claims and behind reporting, increasing transparency, increasing data quality and governance to make people feel more confident in what these companies are reporting. So that is all good, and we want that transparency, and we are, and that is why all of these types of reporting metrics will be part of our financial reporting. Right now, European companies incorporate sustainability and kind of ESG type topics, environmental social governance, into their financial reporting, and American companies don't, but we'll be getting there, and therefore we'll have the same auditors across finance and the work that I do.
Is there work that your company is doing in China?
Yeah, I don't know exactly. China, I mean, we have a lot of operations in China, and so they're
Yeah.
incorporated into everything that I report. I work with them. And we have a lot of sites with solar there and things like that. And they have strong regulations on carbon reporting, and they have customers that care as well. And they're all part of the organizational boundary that is in our greenhouse gas reporting as well as our financial reporting. So they kind of are all aligned. But I don't know. I know that they have their own regulations, but I don't know off the top of my head. Turkey as well, Australia, California, a lot of different countries.
How about India? Are you in India?
Yes, we definitely have a lot in India. They have very strong green building requirements. They have a lot of, the teams that I work with in India are incredibly impressive, very strong awareness on sustainability. And some of them are more, also, they've been hit by some of the higher heat waves. So they're impacted more, and they're closer to some of these things. But yeah, they're an incredibly engaged workforce on these topics.
So before we finish, tell us what your concerns are. Tell us, in the area of sustainability, what is your, oh my gosh, we got to be careful for this answer?
I think, I don't, I mean, I honestly think, like, when I first started and we just got our new science-based target, I seriously was thinking, gosh, I don't know how we're going to get there.
Yeah.
And, I'm one of the people that's supposed to be trying to get us there.
Yes, sure.
So, being humble, I would say, and then also boots on the ground, and just, I think it has taken, we have reduced our emissions significantly, 35% since 2018, and that is through a lot of, increasing solar panels, increasing renewables, investing anytime a site needs a new boiler, making sure we're getting the most efficient, working with supply chain, working with the right procurement people. Like, it takes a lot of conversations. Like, don't just buy the same boiler that we had before. We need to look at efficiency levels and try to cut electricity and natural gas usage as much as we can to be efficient, and this is what we need to do. And so I think that I feel a lot better about being able to work across lines and hit the goals that at first seemed, I mean, they still are daunting. When we have net zero goals by 2050, and that would be a 90% reduction. But we are certainly on track and have a path towards our 2030 goals.
Wow.
And I feel very grateful for that. And I do think, though, that even if all these corporations get to that goal, we still, we're not on path to get to 1.5. We're not going to hit that global target. We will have more warming than that for sure. We're already, kind of at close to 1.5 degrees of warming. So we have to learn to adapt as well.
You have a fascinating job.
Thank you.
I can see why you'd want to be there 60 hours a week. Or once you get started, you don't want to stop thinking about it, right?
Yeah, I feel very lucky to work on these topics. Yes.
Incredibly, not just complex, but worthwhile things as you're doing. I would say so much behind the scenes. People don't know what Eaton Corporation does unless they see a sign. You have a very remarkably interesting line of work here.
I get to work with a lot of great, it's definitely a team effort. It's wonderful. But yes, I feel very fortunate working for a great company.
Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us today. It's been very enlightening for someone who can hardly spell the word science and everybody else. I think it's important we learn about people like you and the work you do. So thank you very much.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.